something that we already do and we have the capacity to do, but they're really being used in a different way. It's actually not to digitize to create collections, but in fact to build digital information sources to be analyzed and metadata services to support research results as opposed to have bibliographic control. And what's important about this, while we focused on new capacities, there was not in the 3 days any point in time that anyone talked about traditional use of library information resources as a critical element in their research. So what was the next step after that? We wanted to instantiate these capabilities in the library in a real-time fashion by work with researchers in real projects and also with the library staff directly engaged in those projects. And so we had a competitive grant process. We gave out 12 grants to multidisciplinary teams. The Wordle that's on the screen is indicative of the variety of researchers that participated, and we focused on university research themes in smart cities, cultural discourse, and Arctic studies. And this is the composition of the platform, and we actually added two in the process of the research projects, and those were virtual reality and web development in response to projects. And in terms of platform utilization, these are the examples out of the 12 projects on what they drew on. And obviously data curation and sharing, metadata services, collaborative spaces. Our libraries must become living labs to serve as hubs for today's research in a fashion that we have not done before. And likewise, digitization and analytics and visualization were very important. So I'm just going to quickly mention 3 projects. I'll go through them quickly. Out of the 12, this one is preserving cultural heritage sites using drones. The researchers had created 3D scans of the sites, and then using virtual reality, they created models that allowed them to recreate what those historic sites once were. And on the lead was an archaeologist, but you also see that geomatics engineering, art, and environmental design had partners in that project. This one, Be a Smart City, is exploring biodiversity with particular attention to pollinator diversity in urban areas. And we actually created high-resolution images of bees common to the area and worked with the researchers and the graduate students to actually build these very high-resolution images, pardon me, so that they could be used both in educational side but also for public side. And this is a new partnership with the natural sciences collections on our campus, bringing together those in the library setting, and a similar project in the area of the herbarium has been developed. And the third one that I'll mention is actually empathic cultural mapping, addressing the issue of new immigrants to the area and the effect of the need for transportation, both for healthcare and jobs and many other purposes, and actually integrates actual interviews with new immigrants and their demographic information about the city and transportation pathways. At the end of the first phase, we had a external review panel, and their findings are really the most important part of this, is that we really need to make researchers fully aware. This is a model for collaboration that is library to researcher, but also library unit to library unit, because we actually have to build an integrated set of services We need coordination. We need to work with the research administration on the campus to reposition ourselves, and also addressing scalability and sustainability. And so these changes are really very central to our effectiveness and importance in our universities going forward. And it's more dependent on a functional design than a disciplinary design. So redefining, reconfiguring, and repositioning. And examples of areas in which that needs to happen is, as I mentioned, disciplinary to functional. Cross-disciplinary platforms serve multiple disciplines, so they do not have to be framed specifically in a disciplinary fashion. Also, digital media and analytical tools are used by researchers in common, and they look at the two in combination, and we in libraries need to look at the content we acquire in collaboration with the way that the capacities for analyzing and disseminating the research results. I refer that to as a new synthesis. We need to focus on how research is done, not research resources. We don't need to be acquiring the very same materials because our researchers are not primarily using those materials that we buy and that we license. Partnerships rather than transactions. Let's stop counting. It's really about the depth of our engagement in research rather than the number of times that it happened. Library staff should be involved in this deep partnership, and they also can build interdisciplinary connections for researchers. Collaborative space, I think I jumped over here. Collaborative spaces, as you saw, that was one of the things heavily used. And so researchers, we need to allow them to reshape our libraries, creating living labs. And likewise, we'll reshape scholars' vision of the library. Critical elements and the scalability. Some of them we already have a very strong record for trust, a record of stewardship, neutrality because we serve everyone in the university equally, and universality because we use common standards. And so much of the necessary infrastructure and expertise is already there. Particularly important to the library, but to our universities, is economies of scale. And the quote at the bottom is from researcher Suzanne Goupy, and she pointed out that with the $30,000 that she used on the project, if it had not been sourced through the library, it would have cost her $100,000. So just think how many times in the university the library can prove to be an economy of scale savings. Sustainability is we have to remain valuable in learning, but if we don't have an essential role in research, then in fact the amount of funding and support and our centrality to the university will diminish rapidly. Access to information is no longer a central role. We need to enable knowledge creation and curation. And the new synthesis, as I mentioned, that actually looks at, looks at content and expertise and capability as an integrated whole. So this is a moment in time for a redefinition profession-wide. And we really have no choice if we want to be the libraries of tomorrow that we have been in the past. Thank you very much.